Welcome to the latest of our LGIU Fireside interviews. I'm Jonathan Carr-West. I'm Chief Executive of LGIU. This is a series of interviews where we sit down with local government leaders, chief executives, other experts, and try and get insights into the sector from their experience of doing amazing things within the sector. And I'm delighted that today we're joined by Cllr Glen Sanderson, who's leader of Northumberland County Council. Glen's led the council since 2020, but he's been a county councillor since 1989, I think. So he's got a fair few years of experience in local government. Before becoming leader, he held a number of senior cabinet roles. He had responsibility for environmental and local services. And as leader, he's really focused on driving economic growth, on improving infrastructure, ensuring stronger service delivery alongside attracting investment and supporting communities across Northumberland. I think many people will know that there have been some amazing, innovative and really sort of big and bold things happening in Northumberland. So I'm really excited to hear from Glen about those. Glen, welcome. And before we begin, could you perhaps tell us a bit about your journey to becoming a councillor and why you got into local politics and what the experience of it has been like for you?
Thank you very much for having me to talk to you this morning. I would say that I got into it because of a road that was closed as part of a new development. I didn't feel at the time that the local community in which I lived had been sufficiently told about this. And so I thought, well, this is not very good. So I got in touch with the local council. I didn't find the response incredibly warm at the time. So I thought I would like to try and do something about this. So I put myself forward. To everybody's surprise, really, I managed to win the seat. And from then on, apart from a break when I stood for Parliament, which I didn't win, clearly, I have been a councillor for quite a long time, mostly in opposition, which is, frankly, compared to being in administration, being in opposition is not a lot of fun, really. But we maintained a strong challenge to what was then a very strong Labour-run council. But by so doing, it built up within us a passion, a real passion to make a change, to do something different. We really felt that there was needing to be a flash of lightning, if you like, in the way the council was running. So when we were lucky enough to be voted in, first time actually in goodness knows how many decades, as a Conservative administration, we didn't have an overall majority, but we were enough to be able to work with colleagues, to be able to get on with the programme that we wanted to do.
So it all started with a road, but I guess one of the things you're best known for now is a railway. The Northumberland Line, I hear it's recently surpassed 1 million passengers. It's a pretty incredible thing. Can you tell us a bit about the Northumberland Line, both where the idea came from, how it got delivered, and what impact you think it's having?
So this is a line that was very popular in the 20s and 30s for taking people to Newcastle and back to the coal fields, really, in southeast Northumberland. And it was closed in, I think, 1964. And for years and years and years and years and years, people kept saying we must open this line again for passengers. And it wasn't really until all the costs and the intricate work that was going to be needed to get this running again was enough then to stop people actually doing anything about it. The previous government came up with a thing called Restoring Your Railways, and that offered good funding for exactly the kind of project that we wanted to deliver. So with that, we went ahead and we had the full cooperation of the government then. We felt as an administration that it was absolutely the right thing to be spending our money on as well. Now, it was like all great adventures, all great projects, all run over time. They all cost more money. They all cause sleepless nights and thicken the skin significantly.
Right. Yeah.
It was amazing how many people said, what a rubbish thing, what a waste of money, it'll never work, who are now, some of them, taking the credit for it. But that's politics. But it did require a lot of dedication and commitment to make this work. And we thought it would, but we didn't have the assurance that it would be as successful as it has been. So we have now almost reached the 1.4 million passenger journeys in a year and a bit, with fantastic customer satisfaction. In fact, it's so popular that we are engaged with Northern Railway and also with the Combined Authority to get some more carriages, because we simply can't carry the people that are wanting to use it. Now we've opened the final station in Bedlington, that demand will rise even more. So that's the first thing we're doing. And then the second thing that we are doing is, at the moment, at least, we want to keep the car parks free so that they are full of cars every day. Those are the cars that would probably be going into Newcastle and getting stuck in traffic jams and causing CO2 emissions and all the rest of it. Actually, this is a really good example of sustainable transport, where you produce something that is reliable, on time, efficient, inexpensive to use compared to other public transport systems, and is doing the business for the people who are using it, whether they're going into Newcastle for leisure, for work, school, and for people coming back from Newcastle and beyond, and coming to a part of Northumberland that is much less known.
Yeah.
Northumberland is very blessed in having wonderful coasts and wonderful castles and fabulous scenery, but it also has a sort of industrialised past bit in southeast Northumberland that actually is really interesting. So the station, for example, in Bedlington, that we just opened this week, produced the rails for the first European rail systems and for George Stephenson's rocket. So it will bring more people in, and we are already looking at how we might facilitate more tourism in that part of the world, and I think we will do that.
Oh, that's really interesting. And have you got any plans to extend the Northumberland Line, or to add different other sort of connectivity developments around it?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, they're not. I mean, you would think, goodness me, we've been through all this. Why on earth would we want to do anything more? But actually, there is every reason why we can extend this line up to two different parts of Northumberland. It will be expensive, but we know that the demand is there. And so whether it's in terms of the environment, whether it's in terms of good integrated transport, whether it's actually just pleasing local people and helping business, it is the right thing to do. So I am in talks with the Combined Authority and the Mayor about helping us fund this. And I'm really pleased to say that the Mayor shares my ambition to see the line extend. And so I'm hoping, my ambition now is to get the first planning application in by sort of 2028. And we have also had from the Combined Authority a feasibility study lump of money of £450,000 to begin. So that's fantastic news. So yeah, we haven't finished yet.
That's amazing. I guess there are three things that really, well, I mean, many things, there's so much that's interesting in there, but three things that jump out to me. One is just the level of ambition. So, yes, there was a government scheme that you were able to sort of capitalize on, but I think that still, for many local authorities, after quite a few years of, we know some of the service demand pressures on local authorities. We know some of the financial pressures on local authorities. Many people, I think, would look at something like that and just think too big, too hard. So I think it's really interesting, that sort of level of ambition and sort of boldness. So when you were talking about, you're developing tourism, you're providing transport, you're taking cars off the roads, you're having an environmental, so many public policy goals ticked off by a single project, and then the kind of rolling effect that, well, then okay, now the Combined Authority is coming in and there's more funding coming with. So I guess there's a real kind of rolling stone effect to it. Just going back to that sort of initial ambition, I guess, what would you say to if there were people sort of watching this who are thinking, I'd love to do something like that, but we just couldn't support that level of ambition. It's too hard. It's too difficult. What were the key elements to kind of bringing people with you in that vision?
And I think one of the key ones is the value of the corridor that the line has created in terms of housing and other developments. So we managed to bring people with us because of that opportunity. And it's there, and it will be an opportunity. And if we do extend the line, that brings more opportunity again. So that's one thing. But I think, the Combined Authority, and I'm the only Conservative on the Cabinet at the Combined Authority, but despite that, we do get on well, and I get on well with the Mayor. She has the spending power and the ambition that I have, and I think she gets it, and the need to continue to build on what we've done, and also the economic benefits as well as the social benefits are so compelling that it makes this money being spent worthwhile.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been able to do it if we hadn't kind of kept a tight ship in terms of finance. We did, however, make the decision to increase our capital programme by quite a lot, but only on things that actually really are important. So there was a Northumberland Line, but we're actually in Northumberland building 3 new super schools. We built one and it's finished and it's fantastic. We're in the middle of the next one, and then we have another one up in Berwick that we're going to start soon. People would say, well, why on earth are you doing this? Surely it's the Department of Education that should be doing this. But actually, whilst we have continued to ask for some help in this from government, and I've just written to Bridget Phillipson again to say, you have, in my opinion, a moral duty to help us here, because if we didn't do anything, the high school would need £13 million worth of repairs. So, that is surely your element towards us. I'll continue that battle, but it won't stop us building super schools, because it's around ensuring that this administration delivers things that are valuable for the future. So whether that's the Northumberland Line or super schools, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. And I love that there's like a spreadsheet and a story involved. So there's the sort of the calculations around benefit and the economics, but there's also a real story about the place and what it means to people. And I think it feels like both those elements have some importance in getting something like this done.
So it's a bit like the new development that we've just begun in the southeast of Northumberland, where QTS Blackstone are delivering a new £10 billion data center campus. That's one of the largest developments that we've seen in Europe. The reason I think they came to us was because 10 years ago, we had, through our arm's length company, led by the chairman, Richard Wearmouth, the foresight to say, let's create this huge area that has got power, that's got water, and that's got connections. Let's build it so that one day it will be the home of a super development. And so because we had that in place, that's what attracted that centre. And from that negotiation, we have now, for us, got a new fund of £110 million, which is our Northumberland Growth Fund. That money is already starting to come in. We've already got about 20 billion, and it will build up to 110 as the development goes on. But that money is going to be completely ring-fenced for business and jobs and opportunities anywhere in the county. So it's not just the southeast of the county that's going to see this development. It's actually going to be the whole county that will benefit. And we've just taken a paper to Cabinet around managing this fund, because what we don't want to see is every member come and say, we need this in my patch, and I want this, or you gave some money there, but you didn't give it to me. So we are setting up a properly managed fund, which will be done correctly. And it's a great opportunity. It's great because we will be able to spend that really important money anywhere in the county.
That's really interesting and important, because I guess one of the anxieties we sometimes hear from people around the sort of inward investment you're describing is, well, how do we make sure that the benefits of that are felt by local communities, and how do we make sure that that we have a capacity to manage them across the county or whatever area we're talking about, so that they neither go out of area nor are kind of confined to a particular bit of the area. And I think that fund model gives you a really kind of hands-on way, gives you levers to make sure the money is spent where you think it ought to be.
So we have this powerhouse, this kind of throbbing heart, if you like, in the southeast of Northumberland through renewable energy. There are huge amounts of enthusiasm, motivation, and brilliant thinking going on in the port of Blyth, where 120 years ago was a hugely important exporting port for coal from the northeast coalfields. In fact, it was the largest coal exporting port in Europe at one time, and then it fell into disuse after the coal boom was over. But it is now the hub of renewables, bringing in huge quantities of power from the turbines on Dogger Bank and so on. That goes into the grid and powers a huge amount of other energy. So that is all happening in Blyth at the moment, and that's really good too. But it's bringing in jobs, and it's our job to make sure that we help facilitate that training, which is what we're doing. So we've also invested something like £15 million in a learning hub in Blyth. We've got a lot of money from government, for the previous government, for levelling up funds, and that's gone there as well. the big factor really is to make sure that we continue the investment right across the county. So we are using money that we are creating from investment in the southeast in a whole range of different ways. And I'm very pleased to say that we have a small business service that is delivering something like 800 new options and jobs in the rural areas. So they are just as important.
And again, I think so much that's interesting there. But Northumberland is a big, big place, and I guess what's interesting about the way you describe it is your size can be a weakness, but it can also be a strength, and it's sort of making sure that you're working from localities back out to the bigger picture and then back in again, and sort of really leveraging that size as an advantage rather than kind of seeing things dispersed too broadly across it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing that I found really interesting, as you said before, Northumberland will be known to many people for its natural, for the coastlines, for the amazing castle. It's also, known to other people as the sort of center of a historic industry. You talked about coal, for example, but those industries were modern once. And what you're leaning into now is new industries, is modernity, you talked about the data center, you talked about renewables. I know the Northeast has also been designated as an AI growth zone, and Northumberland's playing a key role in that, which I'd love to hear about. But it feels like you're really sort of leaning in, saying the tradition of Northumberland is a tradition of modernity and innovation and embracing the new and driving new industries forward. And that's what you're really leaning into, it feels like.
Yeah, the really key industries that are coming in will fund the development elsewhere. And we have to make sure that we do that in order to keep the pace going in our rural areas and our small villages as well. So we're actually lucky to be part of a fund called Borderlands, which in a nutshell is a brilliant piece of work between the councils. So we have Cumbria, we have Scottish Borders, Dumfries and Galloway, ourselves and so on, who have an amount of money to spend on those kind of developments that you wouldn't normally see. So, for example, we're using our Borderlands funding to fund a whiskey distillery and a visitor centre in a place called Cllr, which is not in the middle of nowhere, but it's not on the tourist trail per se. So that's hugely important. We're also building a new theatre in Berwick, again, £26 million of Borderlands funding, and we will be providing 2 or 3 million towards that as well, in order to kind of keep the excitement. So Borderlands funding is very important as well. So we managed to get a good chunk of money from that as well to do those very things that are more difficult. Also, we have, I think it's 8 town deals that are getting £3 million each to produce projects within their villages. That's a lot of money. It has its problems because you have to make sure that the projects that will get funded are those that meet the majority of the wishes of the majority of the people. And that sometimes is quite difficult. It's often said the more consultation you do, the more difficult it gets. But actually, we will get there, and we are getting there, providing the very kind of interesting, important things that smaller places would normally not get. So we've got Borderlands coming in as well, and that's really important. And it's lovely to be able to work with council and council leaders cross party, cross border in a way that delivers for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, at LGIU, we often talk about connected localism, and that's a fantastic example of doing that. Places with their own distinct identities, their own strategies, but also connecting and working across broader geographies as well. And I guess the combined authority is an example of that also. I mean, how you mentioned earlier you're the only Conservative on the cabinet there, but there's a sort of collaborative approach. How have you found the experience of being part of a combined authority?
I've found it mostly good, little bits of not so good, and 1 or 2 things that I don't like at all. But the important thing is to be able to ensure that Northumberland's voice is heard. And that can be done in a number of ways. And actually, Northumberland has led on the rural and environmental portfolio. And it is so far the only portfolio that has a chunk of money of £13 million attached to it that's been agreed by the Cabinet. And that will be used in right across the piece. And obviously, it can bring difficulties because we have Newcastle and Sunderland and Tyneside and so on within the cabinet, and they have different needs and different wishes to ourselves. But one thing that I am hopeful that will work is the future of bus services.
Right.
because I think it's very important to have lots of buses running in towns, but it's also incredibly important to have a bus service that goes to the places where we want to encourage people to go to that may not have a great lot of passengers, but is really important to those passengers that use it. And I think that is something that is very important. We've seen how the Northumberland Line works
Yeah.
in the southeast of the county. So buses present themselves as a good way of moving forward in rural areas. But at the moment, it's obviously very difficult to get a bus company to do a run that's not making their money. So that's our money that then has to go into it. So the combined authority will help with the funding of that. And it's up to me, really, to make sure that I present the case that is reasonable and fair and attractive for any funding I want for Northumberland, while at the same time being very much part of the North East region. It was something the Conservative government, of course, set up, combined authorities.
Absolutely.
So it's up to me to make sure
Yeah.
it works. And it does. By and large, it does.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I asked the question, and my reflection is that when I speak to people in combined authorities, their general view is, you know, I wouldn't undo it now, but obviously this is something that I asked the question because many people around the country will be entering into this world. You know, the government has a program that want to roll out strategic authorities everywhere now. There are a few bumps along that road, but that is still the intention. And there are at least 6 new areas entering into strategic authorities, other places entering into foundational strategic authorities. And so I guess there will be many leaders, council leaders now, sort of contemplating that, seeing that coming down the track at them, and maybe excited about it, but maybe also with some trepidation. And so, I was just wondering your sort of advice to those people on what should they know before they get into it?
I think it's a good question. I think there are dangers and there are safeguards that leaders need to make, and I'm sure they've already figured those out. I think one of the kind of dangers that I see slightly happening now is the fact that we have got a fantastic set of officers. We kind of had a bumpy time a few years ago, and we have a really superb chief executive and a team of officers that I want to work with, and we do work really well. So it is a great blessing for me actually to have a cabinet that's completely together, an office team that's completely together, and the two of us working completely together. What I don't want to see happening with the combined authority, though, is to see any of those slightly pushed to one side in terms of decision making. And I make that absolutely clear, because what I don't want to see is, in 5 years' time, county councils being dissolved and all the power being left with a few in a combined authority, which to some is a perfectly reasonable ambition, but for me, it certainly isn't. So I think the principle is fine. The need to work in a relatively tough but consensual way is also very important, and to make sure that the relations are important from the start, because having a row with somebody at the beginning is not really in anybody's interest. So to leaders, I would say go in and with the ambition of making it work, and I think most will work, but you do have to be on your toes. And I do worry, to be honest, I do worry slightly about the bigger picture in, a decade's time.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but I mean, that's certainly, the work we have published at LGIU very much stresses that combined authorities, are just that. The local authorities are vital constituent parts. Yeah, we often talk about local by default, regional where it adds value, national only where strictly necessary, and that gives you a decent model of governance.
Yeah.
I did want to talk a bit about the future. I mean, I'm struck by, when you were talking about the data center, for example, you were talking about 10 years ago, investing in that land to make sure it had the infrastructure that would enable that sort of inward investment. And I don't know. I guess 10 years ago, you didn't have a completely clear picture in your mind of what that sort of data center would eventually be like. It was about creating enabling conditions that enabled so that whatever came down the track, you were able to take to make the most of it. I guess as you sit here now today, thinking about 10 years into the future, 2 versions of the question, I guess. Firstly, where would you like to see Northumberland in 10 years' time? But also, what are the things that you are doing now to set the foundations for that 10-year horizon?
Okay, so no, we certainly didn't think data centers would be the occupier of that land back then. We thought it would be something to do with battery manufacturing. And in fact, that site did go originally to a company called British Volt, which built up a lot of hope and excitement, but actually didn't work. So then we kind of then looked more into the data center possibilities. What are we doing now? We are doing two things. We have already created a new land assembly, not very far away from this site, where we have got sufficient land to be able to interest a large manufacturing capacity. There are talks going on at the moment on that bit of land. We are also making sure that those businesses in the rural areas and in villages and so on have that the benefit of the funding that we're getting from the Northumberland Growth Fund, plus going into the Combined Authority seeking grant funding for specific issues. A lot of them around tourism still,
Right.
because tourism is incredibly important for Northumberland, and we need to make more of that still, and we need to make the attraction even greater, and across the county more, rather than just going to the places that are really popular now. We are also making sure that we continue to have free town centre car parking. Now, that doesn't sound maybe like a big deal, but it is. It costs us quite a lot of money. But that is a way of keeping our town centres with enough people coming in still to shop locally that they can park their car and leave it for 2 or 3 hours for free. That's really important, that kind of thing as well as using every opportunity to bid in more for money that we can. What is true to say is that in recent years, Northumberland has had more funding coming in than at any time in the history of the county council. And that's because we have a great team of officers, clear ambition from us, the politicians, and I would say very good relations between the vast majority of members in the chamber who want to see the same thing as us. So I think that strength of purpose, the same ambition, the same commitment, the same excitement, actually, and the honour of being in this seat and running the council will always be a passion for me, absolute passion. And as long as we keep that passion, we'll just go from strength to strength, I think.
Yeah, that's really inspirational. And it is one of the strengths of local politics at its best, isn't it? That because it's based around places, you can get, if not consensus, then at least kind of people moving in the same direction, people with the same aspiration across party, across sort of, at its best, local politics offers a model of how to do things that I think national politics could learn from in terms of sort of focus. One of the things that really strikes me in what you're saying is the sort of the attention to both the small and the big, the immediate and the long term. So, you're talking about sort of investing in future sites and things that are going to come down the track many, many years hence. And you're also talking about, free parking now, today, and you're making the link between those things. But I think that's really challenging. For many leaders, I think, not for many people in leadership positions, that's one of the challenges people often reflect back to me. So trying to attend to the day-to-day small things and the big picture future things at the same time is incredibly challenging. How do you maintain that dual focus and that link? Because I was struck by the town centre parking. You said, it seems small, but actually and then you linked it to all those big long-term goals in a really clear way. How do you kind of maintain that dual perspective?
Well, I think you maintain it by making sure you listen to people a lot and do genuine face-to-face stuff, which is something I like to do. So you genuinely know what people want. And I think it's a sense of responsibility that it is absolutely pointless, completely pointless, running a council to deliver pothole repairs and emptying bins and kind of adult social care and doing all of that stuff and nothing else. It is about using the money that you have. And I would say that I don't want to, God forbid, I don't want to sound party political, but it would be very nice if we had some more money from government. But I won't go there. But there's so much more we could do, actually. It would be fantastic to get some more money. But actually, running a council is like running a business. You've got to think about what you're trying to do, what you really want to do, and making sure that what you really want to do is what everybody wants to do, and then doing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Cllr Sanderson, thank you so much for your time today. I know that there's such a huge amount of inspiring inspiring examples there. It's making me want to come to Northumberland right now. I'm sure many people watching this will feel equally inspired to come up and see the nature and the past and the present all sort of coming together in a big sort of strategic vision. It's an amazing thing. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights with us here at LGIU. Thank you everyone for watching and for listening. Do stay tuned for more in this interview series, where we'll continue to showcase the best, most interesting, most innovative and ambitious things that are happening in local government around the world. Thank you for joining us.